Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Cecilia Tement. Cecilia Tement is a transformational story coach, trauma recovery specialist, author, and motivational speaker. She is a graduate of Ryerson University's radio and television arts program and has worked extensively as a community outreach officer, child advocate worker, event planner, and fundraiser. Wow, you're doing a lot of things here. Having lived through child abuse and growing up with traumatic experiences from her past, Cecilia decided to confront her abusive father and shift out of the negative mindset that was holding her back. Instead of living and reliving pain, she felt the compelling need to move forward even though she feared what would happen. In what was a life-changing moment, she sought closure by finally telling her father how she really felt. She expressed how deeply his actions had dramatically impacted her life. He had no choice but to hear the hard truth. Cecilia now uses her personal story as inspiration to fuel her journey in helping to change people's lives. She has dramatically shifted her clients from feeling like victims to understanding how to release their old story, discover their true story, and live their authentic story. She believes that with help, hope, and love, anyone can heal their story from the inside out. Welcome to the podcast, Cecilia.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. It's so nice to be here.
Yes, so we're all interested to hear your story and how you got to starting out in a pretty rough situation to where you are now, inspiring people.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, I think that I really only just recently came out of it, if you want to call it that. I'm 44 now, just turned, and it was really a little over 2 years ago where my entire life shifted and turned around. I actually was in a state of severe depression, extreme anxiety. I was having nervous breakdowns, and it was a result of kind of a lifetime of living in my trauma and living in my pain. And, something that fully changed my life is I just decided I'm going to confront my dad about the abuse that happened oh so long ago. I have to do this to get this off my chest and off my heart and off of my soul. And so the same day that I confronted him, my best friend was killed by a drunk driver in an accident. And it was kind of at that moment that I realized that life is just way too short, and that, I needed to do something drastic to really, really make that change. So that's kind of the day everything turned around for me. And in that moment where I confronted him about the abuse, it kind of just developed this beautiful new relationship that I never thought would be possible. I released the pain of my unforgiveness and I just started over. And from there, I became certified as a life coach, and I just started working with people right away. And so the last couple of years, I've really just spent leaning into the idea that I can help people to release the concept of victimhood, to move from that to survivorhood, and then to understand how to be a thriver after surviving. And so those are all kind of the elements of what I do with people. And it's so exciting for me because I know that it works. I've lived it. And so I'm really, really happy every day to kind of live out my passion, which is to truly help people to get past the pain of what happened to them.
Wow. Well, thank you. And thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah. You know what? It's meaningful work. It's important. I love it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure there are people in your situation that are in the situation that you were in. Or maybe they're just a little fresh out of it. Maybe they're 20 and they've left home or whatever. What is your first piece of advice you would tell them if they're in this situation, or they have this unforgiveness where they're safe now, but it's still affecting them?
Yeah. And it can actually feel very unsafe to be in a position of the aftermath. Because even if you're not still being threatened in the immediate moment, It's the threat of the memories that haunt you. It's the threat of the trauma that you carry with you. It's the threat of not feeling good enough that becomes your everyday mantra. And so for anyone who's going through this, and sort of whether you're just coming out of an abusive situation, or you're still in one, or you've been out of it for 20 or 30 years, and that is definitely the case with many of the people that I speak to. The one thing that I find that is so important is that, you know, you have to kind of give yourself some grace and space, and you have to not be hard on yourself. Self-compassion is key. Self-love is everything. And the more you love yourself, the more you're able to move forward in the healing process. So I think that's the number one thing, is to be like, there's no judgment around how long it takes to heal, what modalities you use to heal, you know, what choices you make in your healing process. I think the important thing is to just know that healing will take time. It will take focused energy and effort, and that whatever happens, it's all okay.
Wow. Yeah. So, when you were in that situation, what were some of your feelings? And did you just feel like there was nothing you could do? Or did you tell anyone? Or was it just all hidden because families don't share with other people?
Yeah, you know, I was so young when the abuse happened, and I remember, like, I was really the first incident of abuse that I truly lunged forward to punch my mom, and it was a very familiar scene to me. And so I put myself in between, and I pushed him back, and he fell back and he punched a hole in the wall instead of hitting my mom. And I was 8 years old. So I just remember him being so big to me, and like realizing that I didn't know what I had to do, but I knew that was my role in that moment. I always wanted to protect her. And so I was always intervening and putting myself in the middle of an attack and being hit myself. And so, you know, those moments were really what stuck out in my mind, even as an adult. And I would often go back and have nightmares about it. And part of the thing that I realized was that being in it and being so young, you look to your parents to show you care, to nurture you, to give you that, you know, support, that safety. And I didn't have any of that from him. And so it was really hard because I felt very alone. And even though, you know, I would talk about it with my mom, I was so young that I didn't have the levity or the full understanding to be able to sort of process through it the way that I am now. And so I think it was just really scary for me. I took a lot to writing and singing and just holing up in my room. And you know, when I was 14, I tried to commit suicide. And so there was all these things that sort of ran in my mind and my brain. And even after my parents got divorced when I was 14, and he even moved to Hong Kong. So he was on the other side of the world. So from 14 to 42, right, I was still being assaulted in my mind by all of these things. And so I think, you know, I really felt very alone. I tried to talk to teachers at school, but I was so messed up, to be honest with you. I was so traumatized that I wasn't even able to articulate things properly. And, you know, it was one of those things where, because I was raised by a narcissist, right? Because abusers are narcissists, that's just the way it is. I sort of sought out and fostered toxic relationships with as many narcissists as I could find. Right?
Oh, no.
It's true. And if I and it was in friendships, in working relationships. You know, I was actually fortunate. I didn't have a lot of those experiences in my intimate relationships, but definitely everybody else, I almost hungered for that attention, and I knew it was empty, but I wanted more. And I realized that that was just, you know, a product of me wanting my dad's love and never being able to get it. And so, you know, those kinds of patterns existed, but I never really felt like I had anybody to turn to. I didn't want to lean on my mom because she was already being abused and assaulted. My older brother was amazing, but he had autism. So he tried to protect me too, but he was being assaulted the worst. So I never had that kind of solace. Like, what do you do in that situation when you're so young and you're so helpless and you don't even know that you can ask for help? And keep in mind, this is also in the 70s and 80s when talking about abuse was really taboo.
Yeah. So you said that you had a conversation with your dad and you were actually able to forgive him and
Yeah.
actually start a relationship, a new kind of relationship with him.
Hmm.
But did you ever feel like you had to forgive your mom? Did you ever feel anger towards your mom for not protecting you, the other adult in the situation, staying in a very frightening situation for quite a few years before she left?
Yeah. You know what? I was so young and I'd always been taught that, when you get married, you don't get divorced. And so I was actually the one who begged my mom to stay as a little kid. I'm like, please don't leave. Please don't get divorced. Parents aren't supposed to get divorced. And I had such a very juvenile understanding that I really was the one who pressured her not to leave. And so in a way we had to work through our own emotions around this, but she said she didn't, but I felt like a bit of resentment that I forced her to stay because I asked her to stay, and that she didn't want to disappoint me, so she did stay, right? And so we had to kind of, I had to work with my own mother wound and figure out all these things along the way. But yeah, back then, not only did you not talk about it, but you didn't seek help and there wasn't a lot available. And so even if she had tried to leave, I don't know where she would have gone. I don't know what she would have done. And it was an interesting dynamic. And when they did, eventually what happened is the reason why they got divorced was, yes, the abuse, but also because he left, he actually just left on business to Hong Kong and never came back. And so at some point, my mom was like, okay, enough is enough, right? We're done. But was it the abuse specifically? I don't think it came into realization and recognition until much later on. And so really, I didn't see him for much of my teenagehood into my 20s. Like, it wasn't until I got married at 26 that he sort of floated back into my life in person, right? And even then, he went back to Hong Kong. So it was like, it was like easy for him to be a dad for a weekend and hard to be a father for a lifetime.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you said you were, with some of the work you did, you were working on the mother wound. We all have this child work that we actually need to do. Maybe not everybody's familiar with that, but basically it's going back into the child's persona.
Yes.
And as the child getting a voice where there's safety in talking to people about, hey, I didn't like this, or this wasn't good, or actually haven't given that child a voice so that we can heal.
Yes.
And in this situation, it sounds like you were the one having to protect your mother. You probably, as an infant up through 14, really being the protector of a parent who should have been the protector for you.
Yeah.
So as you work through that, any ahas or what came through that on that?
I mean, I never really blamed her for not protecting me because she really did her very best and she fought back so many times just to protect me and my brother. I think that, I think the resentment more came from consistently living in victimhood. And I think that I resented when she was stuck if I was trying to move forward. And to this day, we work on our relationship and we work on our support of each other. We work on our growth of one another. And I think that I always look at her behavior now as, why did this happen? Why is she saying what she's saying? Why is she feeling what she's feeling? And she grew up in abuse herself. She had no mother around. Like, her mom passed away when she was very young. Her stepmother was abusive. Her dad was abusive. Like, she had no one. Like, and so when we think of generational pain and generational trauma and healing the mother wound, I had to heal the father wound too. Every wound had to be healed. And so I think, my revelation in that was, the wounding is not about me and my worth. The wounding is about how she was wounded, and that's why I was wounded. And so then it's kind of that understanding the pattern and knowing how to break it and shatter it. I think that's what really gave me an awakening. It was like, okay, wait a minute. If I'm going to stop it in its tracks as a mother myself now, and I want to stop from bleeding on other people because I'm unhealed, then I have to start from where it began, right? And so going back and understanding that made it so much clearer to me. Like, I can't hold her accountable or responsible for what she didn't know with the information and the understanding and the realization she had in that moment. She did the best she could, you know. And even with my dad, he did the best he could because he grew up in violence and that's all he knew. So he just passed on what he was taught, right? So in my mind, it's like the buck stops with me. If I'm going to be the best parent possible, the best mother possible, then I want to make sure that I'm not going to screw up my children by not healing my wounds first. And so that's kind of how it all tied together for me in a really symbiotic way.
Beautiful. So how many children do you have?
I have two beautiful girls, 14 and 11, and they're full of life and spunk and, you know, all kinds of good stuff. But it's interesting, you know, I think that for them, I have impacted them in a real way, good and bad, you know, and realizing that and growing up with those understandings of the kind of parent that I have been and how I can be a better parent has really helped me so much. You know, I was in the beginning, before I healed, I was yelling, I was screaming to try and get them to behave in the way that I thought they needed to. But by opening up the door and allowing them to discover their own self-love and accepting them exactly as they are, not, you know, some sort of fictitious illusion of what I feel like they had to be. Now I can really lean into my role as a mom in a really wonderful way.
Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to back up a little bit to your beginnings here. So in your bio, you have that you went to school for television and
Yes.
and art. Was it television and art, or what?
Yeah, it's radio, television, arts. Yeah.
Radio, television, arts.
Yes.
And then when you came out of school, did you ever do that?
I didn't even dabble for 1 second in that area. I went to school for 4 years and did something completely different. Right out of graduation, I ended up working at a shelter for abused women and children, and I stayed there for 18 years. That showed me a lot. But I'll tell you, the interesting thing I learned from that experience is because I had not healed, I was not totally ready for that environment. You know, you cannot work in an environment like that and not be consistently triggered. You cannot work in an environment like that and not find some relational things there from your own experience. And because I had not gone to therapy, I had not received any help and support around it, I was effectively pretty messed up, and I made a lot of big mistakes. And in fact, you know, I left that job in a reign of terror in a way. Like I just, you know, because I was so broken at that time. I would say broken, but not broke, because I'm together now. But I was so broken at that time that I was always feeding into other people's drama and sort of almost distracting myself from my own pain by focusing on other people's lives, when really that wasn't my business or my place. And I really screwed up, truthfully, you know, without getting into gory detail. But I screwed up because I had been damaged by the pain. I had been hurt. I had been bruised, and those bruises had never, you know, gotten better. I didn't apply any balm on the bruise. I didn't do anything to hold myself. And so now that I've done that, it makes a huge difference. But I spent so long kind of walking down the wrong path, trying to fill my empty cup that had a hole in the bottom. And now I know that, you know, I had to seal the bottom up. And so that my water, when I pour it in, it overflows, right? But it took me a while to get there.
Beautiful. So now when you're working with people, where do you even start with something like this? Where do you even start with someone who is broken, who is not loving themselves, and maybe they're depressed, maybe they've already tried to commit suicide like you did?
Yeah.
Where do you even start?
I think I just start from the beginning, and I just ask them, you know, who do you blame for your pain? Who do you blame for your pain? How did it happen to you? Why do you think it happened? And I start investigating so I can bust it apart, right? Like it's one of those things where, you know, when I hold a lot of space for them, I listen to everything they have to say. I let them sort of just spill their guts out, because we all need a spilling, right? You've got to let it out and get it out in order to allow the love in. And so, you know, I have no problem like sitting there for however long they need to for them to tell me their stuff. But then what I do is I really do try and turn it upside down and have them look at it from every aspect and every corner, and relationally for them to understand that how they feel about themselves and who they are inside has absolutely nothing to do with how they were treated. You know, at the end of the day, you have to kind of healthily, emotionally detach and separate yourself from the idea that someone else made you who you are, because that's just not the case. We make ourselves who we are, and that we have choice. Like I always say to everybody, I'm like, I will never ever be a victim again, because I choose not to. The minute I see a red flag come up, the minute someone says something to me that's disrespectful, abusive, hurtful, guess what I'm going to do? Cecilia's going to stand up and say, I don't appreciate that. I find that very disrespectful. I find it hurtful. I find it abusive, and I'm not going to participate in this exchange if that's what's going to happen. And I walk away, you know, and the ironic thing is I haven't had to do that, because now that I feel good about who I am, I only attract the most incredible interactions, the most loving people, the most supportive circle. You know, it's just like this sort of magical elixir that's going on inside of me, where, you know, as I give love wholeheartedly and without expectation, everything comes back to me in spades.
So since we're talking about this subject, I would like to give people some resources. Mm-hmm. So if someone right now is hearing this and they're in an abusive situation, whether they're a child or an adult, mm-hmm. what resources are there? Like you said, you worked for an agency that helped people. Yeah. Where can people call, or what can they do, or where can they go to get help?
Well, there's always, so depending on where you are and what country you're in, there's usually domestic violence hotlines, child welfare agencies, you know, there's so many different things that wherever you are, that you can look up and ask people for support, ask people to help you. Like in Canada, we have Kids Help Phone. It just depends on what it is you need. Again, I'll speak to the Canadian aspect because that's what I know best, but you know, CAMH is the Canadian Center for Addiction and Mental Health. Like there's a million different places you can reach out to. So it's a matter of doing your research, asking for help. If you are a child suffering with abuse, you can tell a teacher, you can tell you know, someone else that's respected in the community to give you some support. I think the idea is whatever situation you're in, talk about it. Tell somebody that you trust, mm-hmm. someone who feels safe for you, whether you're a child or an adult, because once you talk and you share, then someone else can tell it for you if you can't. If it's not safe for you, someone else can help you. There's also so many ways that if you are in an abusive situation that you can prepare to leave. You know, always in working with women and children who are in those particular environments. It is very scary. It's extremely hard to leave. It can be incredibly daunting. So I think it's a matter of, if you have a safety plan, an escape plan, you know, leaving an extra suitcase of clothes packed somewhere that's accessible, with a cell phone that's accessible, or leaving it at a neighbor's house or a friend, trying to find a time to leave when the abuser's not there. There's all those kinds of little tricks that you can use. And I think that sometimes it's just a matter of being brave enough to say it, and knowing that there is always help out there. Now, is all the help created equal? I will say no, it is not. There are situations where someone can be in an abusive situation and they'll get countercharged, or there's all kinds of, you know, tough stuff that happens that is not predictable. So when that happens, you just kind of have to stay strong and stay true to who you are and speak out what happened to you. But definitely there's so many different resources, and I think that it's a matter of saying, hey, I need help. It's okay to admit that. There's no shame in it. And I also want to say, with violence, like I've used this statement often, but violence doesn't discriminate, but love doesn't either. So there is love and support to be had wherever you are.
That's beautiful. I love that. I really love that. So, so it's just really been a couple years since you've been free, if you will.
Yeah.
Free from depression, free from, you know, kind of pushing down what was happening, and actually healing it. So do you have like a morning practice, or do you have any certain practices or things you do throughout the day to remind yourself that you're worthy and
Yes.
loved and that you are you and no one else can tell you who you are? Any
Yeah.
practices or things that would help someone?
You know what? I every time I get up in the morning, and I have I am enough written on my mirror, right? And I read that every single morning, and I just wake up and I have gratitude. I wake up and I say, thank you for my life. Thank you for this opportunity to be of service. Thank you for this chance to breathe in and out and to bring love to the world. And I just, you know, I do meditate a lot. I think it's really important to sit in the quiet of your mind, especially when you've been through so much trauma. It's so hard to kind of just quiet down your thoughts and get them to, you know, give you a little bit of calm. And so I really do try and sit in the quiet. Guided meditation is always very helpful, I find, for anybody who has a hard time just sitting still. And I try to just kind of remind myself on a consistent basis, like, I am love, I'm of love, I give love, I'm light, I'm of light, I give light. And I say those things to myself all the time. Thoughts are things. So whatever we think, whatever we feel, that comes out in our reality. So I'm consistently reminding myself, hey, wait a minute, is this voice that I'm hearing in my head, is this the voice of the loving, supportive Cecilia, or is this the voice of the Cecilia who lived in lack and who lived in hurt? And being able to tell the difference and then come back to a neutral space helps me out so much. And I really do, this is one of the things that I think keeps me happy is I do my very, very best every single day to not judge, to not criticize, and to not condemn anyone. I think that when you come from a place of absolute understanding for each and every human being, no matter where it is they've come from or what they've experienced, that's when true change occurs. I don't think any one of us can sit there on our high horse and say we know it all. And so it's nice to be able to open up the door and say, listen, I don't know everything. I want to learn from you. I want to share with you. I want to grow with you. And when we can be humble in that way, I think that is something that helps us to bind together as people.
Yeah. I love that distinction, or the question, am I acting or being in love or being in lack?
Mm-hmm.
When we're in lack, it's really sad.
It is
hopeless, right? It's so hopeless.
It's
but
so hard.
There's so many possibilities and choices and opportunities, and you feel good.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Like, lack is the most, like, kind of low vibrational energy that you can have. And what happens is, as human beings, we fight for significance. We fight to feel significant in ourselves and from other people. And when we fight for significance, we're sort of out of alignment with the idea that we're already whole, that we're already perfect, that we're already enough. And so, you know, I don't have to prove my significance to anyone. I don't even have to prove it to myself. And I sort of have learned to let go of all the trappings of feeling like I have to be anything for anybody. You know, I used to be the biggest people pleaser around, and maybe some people were very happy to know me back then because I would jump through fiery hoops for you. But now, you know, I might jump through the occasional fiery hoop, but generally speaking, I know that I've got to take care of myself first before I can take care of anybody else. And so now it's like, because I don't lack any love in my heart, because I don't look to anybody else to make me feel good about me, then I just always have plenty for everybody around me because it overflows all the time.
Beautiful. And I had a question just about your daughter. So as you were making these changes, you said it's just been in the last few years. So have they said something like, you know, Mom, you're kind of different? So Cecilia, I know it's just been a few years since you've actually made this healing journey. And I was just wondering, you're two girls. Have they said anything or noticed anything or said, Mom, hey, you're really different now than you were when we were little? Have they said anything to that effect?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we kind of joke about it now. It's like they kind of saw me like a bit of an alien for a while because, you know, they had seen, you know, and unfortunately, and I feel badly for this, but they had seen me in my worst state of depression. There was a time when I had a massive nervous breakdown, and I didn't eat or sleep for 7 days. And, you know, I was essentially like a puddle on the floor, and I couldn't even move to walk up to sleep in my bed. And I remember being on the couch upstairs, and they would come and cuddle me and, "Mommy, what's wrong? Are you okay?" And I couldn't even get the words out, and to have them see me in that state, it was so heartbreaking. And to this day, I wish they hadn't been through it, because they saw me like that, and it was just one of those things where I can't take away the experience that they had witnessing me in that breakdown moment. But they are so lovely and so supportive and so amazing. And both, you know, with them and my husband, it was like they held me, you know. And I think that seeing me go from that space to where I am now has been such a dramatic shift. And so that's why they say I was alien-like, because they almost didn't recognize me. And, you know, it's just like the cloud had gone away that was over my head all this time. And to be able to see me genuinely happy and to really smile and to feel it from my soul, it was a huge difference for them. And so, you know, it's been a really wonderful journey, having their support.
Yeah. And how has that opened up your communication with your girls, as far as how is your communication, you know, after the depression and now compared to before?
Well, you know, as I mentioned earlier, because my best friend passed away, they were very traumatized by that. And actually, they're still working through some of their own issues with anxiety and depression. And we always talk about everything openly now. We kind of, you know, we truly support each other through all of our different phases and where we're at. And, you know, I think that it was a big shift. Like when everything happened all at the same time, it was quite significant. And, you know, I just feel like kids are wiser than we ever give them credit for. You know, they just understand so much. And so for me, having open lines of communication is crucial to their growth, to my growth, to our bond together. I have more deep and meaningful conversations now with every single person in my life than I ever did. And my kids are no exception.
Wonderful. So explain to me a little bit about how you work with people. First of all, how do they find you and know about you and know to come and ask for you? And then once they do, I'm guessing they come for all different reasons.
All different reasons. I have clients from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds and experiences and levels of trauma and pain. People find me on my website. It's CeciliaTement.com, but but also through social media. I actually right now, for example, I'm going through 28 days of 28 truths of how I healed my story to write my story. And that's been really eye-opening, because I've been posting pictures of my childhood, and people are resonating so much with that, because I talk about the messages of what I was feeling at that time and what I realize now as an adult. And so, you know, people who are following my social media will know that I speak very plainly, very frankly. I'm extremely honest and vulnerable, but in a really strong way, because I know that I'm so past that pain now. It actually doesn't hurt anymore for me to reflect back. And so when people resonate with that, they get in touch with me, and it's been really lovely, because I've been incredibly fortunate to work with some fantastic people who were just so ready to start healing. And so for me, it's just been an incredible experience getting to see them sort of blossom from feeling like this to opening and being totally free and allowing themselves to just to be themselves, and maybe for the first time in their lives.
Yeah, so beautiful, so beautiful. So talk about your book.
Yes, so my book is, oh my goodness, I was going to show it, but I realized it's over there, so we'll have to put a link up after. But I wrote a book called If I Could, I Would, and it's my journey from abuse to hope. And I talk about it from a child's perspective. And basically, you know, I share that story that I did earlier where I felt like I was a wall, you know, preventing my dad from punching my mom, that I would allow him to punch me instead. You know, I really use these kinds of metaphors to talk about what it would be like if I could have reimagined the pain of my past going away and just disappearing. And so I kind of put myself in all these different situations and imagine that I'm the one that rescued my mom and my brother and myself from all of these things. And then what happened was I showed my dad the book, and he was very moved, and he asked to write a letter at the end. And so what's so beautiful is he basically asks parents and caregivers to just think once, twice, 3 times before they lift a hand, before they scream a word, before they hurt a child that they're caring for. And it was so moving and so touching. When I did my book launch in August, my dad came on and talked, and my mom came on too. And everybody was just in tears because he was so vulnerable and opening up and being honest about the mistakes that he made and how he's made change, and encouraging other parents and caregivers to really, really, you know, rethink the way that they are disciplining their kids or interacting with them or communicating with them. And I genuinely believe he made some incredible change that week because people were transformed by hearing the story.
Well, and the wonderful thing about it is you coming forward, as difficult and as scary as it was, brought your family back together in a healthy, beautiful way.
Yeah, it really did. And it's and it took a long time. I mean, my dad's 80, right? Like, it's not like it took a whole lifetime. Like, these are, sorry, Dad, I outed your age. You won't like that. But anyway, he's a spring chicken. But, you know, it took a lifetime for us to get to this place. And now that, you know, we have this time together, there isn't a moment to waste. And so I think what's really, and this made me cry, like every time he mentions it, every time I read it, it makes me cry. But he said at the end of his letter in the book, he said, you know, a second of your love is worth a century of mine. And
beautiful.
You know, and I just like, oh, my heart, you know, when I read that, and I couldn't believe it. And I was so grateful to him because it is so rare. And people say this all the time, and I believe it to be true. It is so, so rare for an abuser to ever admit that they were wrong, to own up to it, to combine that with an apology, and then to also mix that in with aligned action. And for me to see him do that, like, I mean, I can't tell you, he actually like went out of his way, and as a gift to me, he printed 1,000 of my books.
Wow.
And he sent them to me, and that's, you know, so I could sign them for people and send it to them. And that, to me, that was such an amazing gesture because it was hard for him. Even coming on and talking about it publicly was tough because he felt shame and guilt.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah. It's been unreal.
So healing.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah. So, big question. What gives you the most joy and happiness in your life right now?
Oh my gosh, what gives me the most happiness? You know what? I finally feel like I'm doing something that I'm super passionate about. I feel like I'm doing what I was meant to do. I had always wanted to write my book, and I had held off for all this time because I was scared. I'm just not scared anymore. And I think that's what makes me happy, is that I'm no longer afraid. And I really just have no hesitation in being fully me. And that makes me excited because I think that that's what I've been waiting for this whole time. And now that I've found it, it's like, I can't go backwards. Like, I actually don't have the ability to go backwards. I can only move forwards and live in each moment. So I'm in my bliss.
Everyone wants to be with you.
Right? And it's contagious. That's the good news. Yeah. Bliss is contagious. And I genuinely believe this, Kimberly, like, you know, you have this amazing light about you. Like, I think when you have a light inside of you and it's genuine and it's true and it's from a heart space, you can't help but just share that with everyone around you. And you just, you know, you attract all the best situations and all the best people, and it just makes your life so much more spectacular. And for me, that's where I'm at now. Like, I could not feel any better than I do, because I am living my dream of helping other people in every way possible.
So just so people can find you and know what your offerings are, let's just kind of summarize it. Tell them your website, what course you have coming up, the book, where they can find everything, what you can do for them.
Yes, everything is on my website. So it's, you know, I'm sure we'll put them in the links below, but it's ceciliatement.com. And on there you can find my book, If I Could, I Would. And I'm also, I've been working so hard on this. I have a beautiful course called Heal Your Story to Write Your Story. It is for authors or course creators. And basically what I do is I help them over a 12-week period do a deep dive to release their old life story. Because what happens is when we try to write something, if we don't release the old story that keeps us stuck, we can't actually move forward freely. And so I help them to do that. I really help them to heal all their wounds and start with a fresh perspective and a renewed purpose of what they're going to be doing for them to help change other people's lives. So that's super exciting. That's happening right now. I'm all over social media. So come find me, Heal Your Story. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Cecilia Tement. You know, I also work with individuals and do one-to-one coaching. So if you are needing help with healing your relationships, any kind of relationship, be it business, be it personal, be it a familial relationship, I help with that. I also help abuse survivors, and I work in depthly with them. I help kids and teens, and writers. So those are my 4 main categories. But I mean, listen, if you need healing, if you need support, if you need someone to help you to uncover your own inner magic, give me a call. I'm here for you too.
Right. Thank you so much. And thank you for being on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been so wonderful, and I really appreciate your time and your love and your support.
Yes. So one more question before we complete.
Mm-hmm.
What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
It is a few words, and it's very simple. Live where your feet are. Live where your feet are. That is the best thing I could tell anybody, because when you do that, you're not stuck in the past. You're not worrying about the future. You're putting your full and free attention and intention in each moment, and truly, truly making the most of every second of your beautiful life.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And we'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Thanks, Kimberly.